Chloe Hudson of World Peace Projects. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Um, it's all right that you had to postpone the first time I was going to have you on the air. Like I said, things happen, so it's great to have you on now doing the show 2 days before Valentine's Day. So why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, what happened to you, what you experienced, what abilities you discovered you have, and because word on the street is you talk with Saint Germain. Well, we'll get into that in greater detail. So that and all the rest of it regarding your life story and how you discovered you have your abilities and the things that you experienced that cause you to do the stuff that you do to fight for world peace and everything else you fight for. You've got the floor.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew, so much for having me. And I appreciate your flexibility. I like to trust when the energy's not quite right. I kind of follow that intuition. So I'm glad we're here at this time. Well, so I guess in 2004 is when I properly started my metaphysical journey. When I turned 21, I had moved to the big island of Hawaii, and I was immersed, unbeknownst to myself, into a very spiritual, eclectic community. And at the time, I was doing a work trade for the most eccentric woman I have still ever known to date. She was just knee deep in all of these spiritual pyramid schemes were the thing back then. So she exposed me to all of this, including just endless modalities and classes and courses, you name it. And I was a kid in a candy store. I mean, I had never heard of any of it, and it was absolutely intriguing. So I just dove into learning as much as I could. I couldn't satiate my hunger for knowledge. And quite quickly after that, I met a man who offers a version of the same type of metaphysical guidance that I now offer. He gifted me a session, and in that initial session, he took me to what he termed the plane of bliss. And the plane of bliss is what the average person terms heaven. And so, and this is happening kind of in an astral projection and meditation space. And I go to this plane of bliss, and as soon as I arrive, every person and pet that has ever crossed over in my life shows up. And they're all talking to me and saying hello. And it was just the most profound experience that I had ever had to that point. And as soon as the session wrapped up, I said, "What was that? And teach me everything you know." So I mentored under him, basically, or apprenticed, I guess you could say. And him and I spent a year, 5 to 8 hours a day. I mean, we were nonstop doing session. And the way in which we navigated it is he would guide me through, and I would go into remote viewing or astral projection, and I would tell him what I was seeing. I believe because of that type of relay, it opened up my access to initially writing out. I just lost the word right now, but often the easiest type of channeling is when you write it. And so that was how it first started opening up to me in regard to channeling, automatic writing. That's what the word I'm looking for. And then it shifted into telepathic communication, where I would communicate with whatever beings or consciousness I was talking to, and then I would relay it to him or whomever was seeking the information. And then it graduated into channeling, where I would allow them to just come through and communicate to the receiver. So we worked together for a solid year doing a plethora of other lifetime experiences, what other people might call past life regression, but I call it just multiple life regressions, and a lot of galactic work, whether we would communicate with other, extraterrestrial beings or higher frequency beings. And after a while, I felt confident enough to offer my services channeling specifically animals. I trusted that when it came to making it more of an official business, communicating with the animals. And so that was my first go. And after a couple of years of that, I opened up to sessions where I will help people access trauma and communicate with their guides or people who had crossed over and channeled, whomever they wanted to access. So I went through about 14, 15 years of dedicated work, both to my own practice and assisting clientele. And more recently, literally in the past maybe 5 to 7 months, my perspective and beliefs have changed radically. And I no longer channel, I telepathically communicate. Most people often overlay the two, but they're quite different. And I've also radically shifted which beings I connect with and whom I align with and how I view a lot of the metaphysical realm. So you might be looking at my timeline on my videos, though for anybody who's followed my work for, I guess I've been on YouTube since 2015, you can see a massive shift and progression in my work. I now, a lot of the beings I used to channel and communicate with, including but not limited to the archangels, Saint Germain, a lot of the deities or quote unquote guides of the New Age, I now deem that the false white light in a large way. And that's been something that changed my entire paradigm very rapidly and thoroughly in the last several months. And there's a lot of brouhaha around that in the current time, because I see that there is a new layer of revealment for a lot of those who seek information. And, as we deem ourselves the awakening ones, many of us are now registering how we might see the New Age movement as actually a one world religion. So I'll kind of pause there and let you interject, because that'll take us into a whole nother realm. But that's a little bit of my synopsis.
All right. The New Age movement, as a one world religion, um, if it were the metaphysical stuff, that's not really such a bad thing, except that the problem, the one issue, well, not the only one, but one of the main issues is the divine masculine suppression of the New Age movement regarding the desire to not acknowledge or pay attention to any of the unpleasant things in reality, which kind of can backfire in a world where there is free will interference by forces that don't have your best interest at heart, meaning that all the bad things that happen to you, you can't necessarily just blame yourself, because there's forces out there that design to interfere with you. However, that's only assuming that the system of domination and control still has power and control over planet Earth. If there was no system of domination and control, then would it instantly become okay to treat the New Age movement as a one world religion, including the hear no evil, see no evil, worry about no evil aspect? Or would that actually be not in our best interest to do, even if we did live on a world of no domination and control? Because, well, cycles of time and the fact that it's for real implies that many, many, many millennia, centuries, eons into the future, planet Earth will definitely go through another cycle of domination and control. And to say that we shouldn't even be concerned about it because domination control doesn't exist in our time anymore. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about what it would be like a few centuries down the line from now. Uh, what's your take on that? Whether or not it's okay or not okay for New Age to be a one world religion, even if we do manage to get to a society where the domination control system exists at a 0% level.
Well, I think that's a fabulous point of the tendency for a lot of New Agers to deny the shadow side, the darkness, the ugly bits, and there's a plenty of it. I mean, I think that one of the biggest foundations of awakening is dissolving cognitive dissonance and doing as much shadow work as possible in order to take responsibility as creator beings, which requires, getting into the nitty gritty and the darkness and looking at the underbelly of the factions that are suppressing and controlling. Not being lost in that, though one must understand it in order to overcome it. So I completely agree with you in that regard, that there is, and I believe it's strategic. I believe there's a strategic agenda from the controllers around swaying people to turn a blind eye to that, quote unquote, in the name of love and light, because love and light and darkness and evil, they're all one and the same when you take it back down to source creation. Matter, antimatter, we're everythingness and nothingness. So it all needs to be integrated. It all must be recognized. And I don't perceive that once we access a higher frequential multi-density experience that a lot of us like to term as, fifth density, fifth dimension, new earth. I don't believe that the true access of a freedom and sovereign based Gaia requires religion at all. To have religion, like many things, ultimately is a structure. And while it can serve in many ways to give people guidance and guideposts, it's ultimately going to limit, because it is a structure, it's a foundation. So I feel that, in my perspective, aligning with spirit and getting back to spirit in self and being able to access that in a way where our truth is transparent, no matter if it looks pretty or ugly in our judgment, and knowing our essence so we can immediately and thoroughly decipher what frequency is about, what's coming at us, and feel safe to look at it and to transmute it. So I think that there is a really, really intriguing war happening right now between the false white light and the darkness. And I don't know if people are clear fully on what way they might be aligning, because of what you're saying. They don't want to face it. They don't want to look at it. Well, non-action is still an action, right? It's still a decision. So if you're not going to step up and do something to help make change, then ultimately you're going to feed the problem. And this movement right now, what the New Age represents is the shift. It's the courage to uphold the true spirit and light. Though I think in a lot of ways it's packaged and wrapped in a very false sense, a false hope, a false awareness, where it's easy to feed oneself beliefs that if we focus on the hunky-dory and the good manifestations and high vibes and everything that we desire, that's more than enough. But I don't agree with that, because I perceive that what we don't know enslaves us. I perceive freedom as truth and truth as freedom. And a lot of truth doesn't look very pretty. So I don't believe that religions are required and or even really desired in the higher frequency experiences, because there's so much access to pure source energy that we don't need that type of structuring, governing system that helps give us the faith and hope, because we just know we have full access. So we don't need something to say, I want to trust and hope and have faith that there is something more. We know it through and through. Therefore, we can let go of a lot of the kind of self-governing systems that help us to keep that faith alive, because I feel like it transcends faith at that point. It just is. It's just truth. It's just your totality.
Yes, and the idea of New Age being religion, I think I should clarify that um, it's only the word religion, and also mythology. Jordan Maxwell said religion and mythology are one and the same. It's all matter of perspective. You believe your religion, someone else's beliefs you don't believe, you would call mythology. Some might beg to differ on if that's a good definition for the words. But anyhow, the point is, religion is designed to not lead you to the accurate truth. And when it comes to the metaphysical science that New Age talks about, that shouldn't really be thought of as a religion, more so as, well, a science. And some would say, well, science is religion. Well, yes, but only if you're talking about the suppression of it by some force that is meant to be acting as a wizard behind the curtain, which the people don't necessarily know is acting as a wizard behind the curtain. So it has to do with, it should be thought of as more of a science, and but not a science that's a religion, I guess. Maybe we need a whole new vocabulary word to describe this, or maybe we do have a word and I'm just not thinking of the right one. So how do you advise, if there's any advice you can give for how to get rid of religious belief on Earth and replace it with science that's not religious science, that is the truth that everybody can agree on if they are empirical, and use that as our new religion? And I would put religion in quotes because it's not really a religion, because it's not designed to brainwash and lie and deceive.
Right. I understand what you're saying. The new way of being.
Yeah.
I perceive that it's not necessary to have these structures created and belief systems created and instigated and followed if one can access their true inner knowing. If one aligns with ultimate spirit source prime, creator of this universe, of this infinity verse, and has access to their true origins, their true internal heart aligned frequency, then their knowing is connected and tapped in directly to ultimate source. It no longer requires certain, governing factions, whether it be a structure and a set of beliefs and or bodies of people coming together in infrastructures. I believe that it releases and collapses that as the old paradigm, and in its place we can open into community-based support where all are truly equal, and we look to each individual with their particular expertise or unique abilities to assist. I don't think that the massive plethora of religions and beliefs and views and all of this, I think all of that complexity dissolves radically quickly when it comes to accessing truth and knowing. I think that there is a design within this inverse matrix to make it all seem very complex, though I think when it comes to knowing self and accessing source, it's can be highly simplistic. And I think that's also why many of us know, if we practice, maybe meditation or just trying to listen to our heart, access our intuition, that it's a quiet, soft voice. Because it's simplicity, it's being with self, it's becoming aware, it's sitting in the nature and finding the rhythm and the frequency, and it governs itself. It's its own consciousness with supreme intelligence beyond what we could ever fathom. And accessing that puts us back into the wave frequency that is all things. And there can be a gentleness that dissolves every other structure that's been erected in the name of mocking up the true creator source essence. So I think it can get a lot more simple once there's an allowance to just tune into self. Many of us have been entrained to look outside of self. And at this point, this is a part of kind of this shift around my awarenesses with the false white light and the New Age movement, because while there is some wonderful offerings that I have received through the New Age around seeing what's more important to myself and releasing certain, material desires and being able to utilize my meta abilities and tuning in and becoming aware of the different frequencies and beings and this and that, that ultimately I still don't need to seek outside of self, even if it's in the name of a quote unquote higher being or, another guide or whatever you might term it. It's still outside of self. And ultimately, that keeps us possibly codependent to other energies, other beings, where we don't feel safe enough and strong enough in our own self to access and have trust and know how to guide our own path and how to make our own choices. And that's something that I've watched very thoroughly now in my, small community of my awarenesses around the false white light, and offering that knowledge to my YouTube subscribers and people kind of in my professional world. And just like my own, watching the betrayal and the depression and the confusion that ensued and the internal chaos, because when they resonate with that, if that's their truth, that in fact, certain beings aren't what they thought they were, then it's like, but now what do I do? Where do I turn? That's who I called on every day, all day. I invested all of my faith and my trust in that protection, and now it's just gone. There's this immediate wobble and a loss of footing, which is really intriguing, because many of us have been saying the whole time, know thyself, know thyself. Well, when it comes to pass, where we might have a shift in perspective, where some of the beings that we believed were guidance or higher protections for us, we change a belief or a perspective in these beings, and then suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to access self. I needed them. I put so much weight into that. I crutched on them. And now that that's gone, I'm lost. And I think that type of maneuver that is often seeded into religions or the New Age movement, all sorts of spiritual endeavors, it's quite subtle, it's very sneaky, and it's really, really important to become aware of, because it still keeps one externally viewing and outside of their own inner access to spirit. Inner access to spirit could be would seemingly be the most natural, easy go-to in our experience. After all, it's the core root of who and what we are, though it seems to be the most vague and precarious and difficult experience to have, which in one way for me validates the inverse matrix, because it truly doesn't make sense when I look back and view it objectively.
Well, thank you. And this sort of ties into something I remember George Kavaslis saying in a recent interview that I watched him do on, I think it was Beyond the Veil program, where he was praising but also criticizing the work of Dolores Cannon, because Dolores Cannon would rely on outside spiritual forces rather than going within herself to get the answers, which, I mean, the forces out there are there to help you and guide you, and they're certainly, I mean, if she can have the ability to discern and detect that the forces she's communicating with are strictly benevolent and have every reason to let them come in and give answers in her QHHT sessions and all, great, but still, it's still a hindrance to the awakening that we ought to be aspiring to get in the long run, the best possible awakening, which arguably would be to be able to go within for answers and not have to rely on other forces. But don't get me wrong, it may work as a nice stepping stone. And I even remember Carrie Samuels. I kind of freaked her out in one during one session that I signed up for hers, where I sent in a question during the question and answer session, and it really freaked her out. And I had a chance to talk about this with her when I had her as a guest on the show, about how I asked her, is it ever a bad idea to like ask the angels, the archangels, for help a lot? Is it better to maybe just say, suck it up and do it yourself? I don't need no stinking angel to help me. She was caught off guard about my question, and she was like, well, you shouldn't really think of it as being a bad thing that you're asking them for help, because they're there to assist you. However, I have heard from some, including George Kavassis, I think, that it's kind of, well, it is a bad thing, he even asserted, and when he was criticizing Dolores Cannon, that asking angels for help too much, particularly in cases where no help is really needed, that's kind of going to be a problem for you, which is going to be a hindrance to your awakening. So, and you seem to be hinting at that when you kind of said these entities like Saint Germain and all there. Well, you're referring to them as false light. I mean, are you actually suggesting that? I can't believe you're actually suggesting that they're not good entities, because I mean, just for Dolores Cannon, she got a lot of answers from them, did she not? Even Georgia Kavassis acknowledged that. So how do you make sense of when you're supposed to say, okay, I don't need no help from any stinking angels anymore, I have what it takes to go within all the time, sorry angels, I don't need you?
Right. Well, and this is such a controversial topic in my world right now. And this is a big part of the shifting, the radical perspective changes I've been having. Because for many years, view one of my higher aspects is Archangel Raphael. And I worked so in alignment with the archangels and a lot of the beings, and I channeled constantly. I mean, 15 years of nonstop channeling, whether it be in client sessions or for self or just chit chat, with the guides, because I can. And so it was a massive shift for me. And I am now in alignment with the perspective that the orders of angels, right? So if we look in the Bible and we look at the different hierarchies of the heavens, so the angels are on the bottom of the totem pole. Archangels are next up, then we keep going. We have, and I haven't memorized all of the exact hierarchies, but we've got the orders, we've got the the seraphim, we've got the cherubim. And what I see this as now is that while there's many, many different texts and passages in the Bible that humans have taken and improperly defined, right? Is the case with the angels and the archangels and the seraphim and the cherubim and the choirs and the orders, is the all of the angels, and I'm going to say angels in a clump, and I know that's not the right word, but I am speaking about the archangels and the seraphim and the cherubim. All of them are higher frequential multidimensional beings that came here on ships, hence the word wings. Okay, hence why the wings came into place, and got either trapped in purposefully into the matrix. Okay, I view them as beings that weren't necessarily here on the up and up. Now, I don't believe that all of them are Anunnaki. Many of them are. I do believe certain ones are from other spaces. Like, for example, I believe that Archangel Michael is from Aldebaran. They're from different planets, different star bodies, different territories. Though they also have been entrapped into the matrix. They are a policing or a peacemaking governing body. And just like we might think of our own police, some of them I would call police, some of them I would call peacemakers, right? There can be individual agendas and ways of being. And while they are accessing their multidimensionality and they are higher frequential beings, which means that they have lots of wisdom, lots of guidance to offer, and obviously proven through and through, I mean, in my perspective, they have the ability to guard. They'd have a guardianship, right? They can protect. If you're in with them, you're good, right? That kind of thing. So they definitely have offered copious amounts of wisdom, intriguing perspectives, very palpable frequencies, on and on it goes, right? Though I see them as policing and working to uphold the matrix. They want to keep us in line. They want to keep the peace and make sure there's not a revolution. There's not tyranny against what I like to term now the false white light. Because if there is, they've got a problem. And that perspective has shaken up a lot of people in my realm. And I'll tell you what, when I heard this, and here's the intriguing thing about it, and I've posted videos on this, is I channeled through Saint Germain. I had a friend was asking Saint Germain questions, and I had mentioned to her that this had come up for me as the angels being archontic forces, and archon just meaning lords or beings with power, right? But I didn't really want to know, because what that would mean for my reality. And so I didn't know she was going to do this, but she straight asked Saint Germain during the channeling. And he told me, I'm paraphrasing here, he was basically saying, that the archangels are certainly the Anunnaki beings, the archontic forces, the Saturnian beings. And I was crushed. I mean, my whole world just shifted immediately. It was such a mass betrayal for me, through and through. And not long after that, I learned, and I'm going to top this now, like with a cherry, that Saint Germain is Saturnian. He's also Saint Germain is Luciferian. He's false white light. so then it was like the whole thing just went up in flames for me. And I registered on a much bigger level that in a big way, what we're dealing with on this, in this matrix plane, we're dealing with the light bearer of Lucifer against the dark knight of Satan. And then all the factions in between and all the alliances that have been made with the different regressive races and you name it. And the New Age movement, I perceive as under the umbrella of Lucifer, which I align as Saint Germain. And this whole movement is a ruse and it's a setup. It's a prettier one than Satan's rule, because Satan doesn't care about the suffering, right? Saturnian, inverse Saturnian energy brings in a lot of destruction and devastation, as people like you and I have seen when we look at some of the horrific experiences of the controller beings and what they've created. The Luciferian faction brings in more pleasure around it, though it's still a controlling body and it's hidden under the false white light. Now, I've proved this to myself. When I learned this about first the archangels, I don't believe at this point I knew about Saint Germain, which was also a huge betrayal, because I had more recently in the past couple years been really aligned with and using Saint Germain as one of my primary teachers. And I did a revocation of all of the archangels. I was at a girlfriend's and it was the full moon, and we created a bonfire and we did a full outside ritual. We howled at the moon, and I did a verbal revocation of all of them. And I felt the most palpable release. It literally, I saw it too. It was like this etheric white veil, very much like how a ghost might be viewed on a movie. It's kind of like that white smoke type thing, lift off of me. And then from that moment on, and it hasn't changed, I've felt more grounded and present in my body, but yet lighter and taller. In that night, I started getting mass downloads, and I guess the guardian beings or higher self groupings just were talking fast and furious. They were talking so fast, and I was going in and out of my dream state, and they were just telling me all these things and the truths and blah, blah, blah. It was like so much. And then I watched, but then I experienced the archangels keep trying to slip back in to either my words. So I'd have these Freudian slips a lot where they would insert their name into my verbiage, maybe with a client or something. Or they'd try to bring something into my reality that, I now aligned as the false white light. And so I'd have to revoke it, things like that. It was really interesting. And I asked them point blank. I asked the archangels and I asked Saint Germain after I found out about him. I'm like, so how come? If you guys are constantly coming to us and offering us guidance and this and that, and many of us have taken your wisdom and proved it as truths, from our perspectives, how come you're not transparent about your origins? Why are you hiding that? If this isn't a manipulation, why would you not come out and just say, look, you guys perceive us as these beings that you've given us this more like godly experience around. Our origins are actually multidimensional, and through the ages, the story, because we can understand that, and I just got the runaround constantly. It was like they were talking out of their mouths to me. Which was such a different experience as I had been having with them when communicating, when I viewed them in a very particular lens. And it just changed my world through and through completely. And I had to find a whole new way to tap in and access, because the nature of my work, is accessing astral space. and I would use their energies to view through. They were my lens. And so when I released them, it was like, okay, how do I do this? And I realized, like we've been talking about, that I don't have at that time, I didn't have such a clear access into spirit besides whatever guides I might be aligned with or working with. And that's when I really registered, okay, part of why I'm so devastated is because I crutched on them. And I tell myself all the time, that I am source, though when it comes down to the brass tacks of it right now, I don't trust in my access of self-source. And so that really shifted my direction and the way in which I tune in and view everything. And it's a very radical paradigm shift, and it's come with a lot of chaos. A lot of people, it's really rocked their world around it, and it can be difficult to find the footing. So I'll just pause there.
Well, thank you for trying to make sense of this. But I can't help but ask you, waking up to this realization about these entities, I mean, I don't know. Should I be asking you this? I mean, how would you know? The question I'm going to ask you is, like, when it's alleged Saint Germain was with the founding fathers, I believe it was during the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and he allegedly got involved during the time of the signing to encourage the founding fathers to make sure that they did something in order to make sure the Declaration got taken care of and everything else that went with it, because according to him, it was going to be such a pivotal turning point in human history, what they were doing to fight for America's independence. And well, based on what you're saying, are you actually maybe suggesting that Saint Germain had just something else in mind when he was trying to get the founding fathers to do whatever he wanted them to do regarding the Declaration of Independence? Or are you going to go maybe perhaps say that this thing about the founding fathers meeting Saint Germain during the signing of the Declaration was a made-up story that someone just made up and it never actually happened? Any theories?
Yeah, so I believe that the entire experience of this whole process is macro to micro. In regard to our solar system, I perceive it kind of originating when it comes to what's important for Earth as Jupiter and Saturn, the fight of the two Red Bulls, okay? And Savron Key, the wonderful Lauda Leon, has some fabulous work on this on her YouTube channel. And her husband have decoded and deciphered a lot of information, and she also has a lot of wisdom around this in a way that she could say it much more succinctly than me, but I'll try to kind of give a little overview. So a big part of the shift that we're going through right now, it's not just about humanity. That's on more of a micro level. It goes macro into the solar system, into the galaxies, into the universes, okay? So let's just stick with our solar system. Jupiter and Saturn are deemed the warring brothers, the Cain and Abel. All of the stories down history of the two brothers opposing each other. And Jupiter represents Lucifer, false white light. Saturn represents Satan, okay, the dark night. And, I can say the light bearer. Let's say the light bearer for Lucifer. That's his definition. So let's take this down into our realm where we hear the stories of the Anunnaki. Okay, and the Anunnaki come in and they are basically our parentage, in a big way, our lineage of our version of hybridized humans. So the two brothers, Enlil and Enki, and the one sister Ninmah comes in under the emperor Anu. And they come to this realm to colonize and to mine. A lot of our rituals, our ceremonies, the ways that we are, certain things we've adopted, like colonizing, like mining, like being into gold and gems and jewels and all sorts of things, have come from their culture. And other extraterrestrial cultures have influenced us, and we have adopted these practices. So they mined gold and other minerals for such purposes as combating nuclear power for their planetary body. Ninmah, otherwise known as Ma-Mi, okay, Mom, Ma-Mi, original, is the female that holds the ultimate deity feminine structure for all mythological stories, for all religions, for all spirituality. It all comes back to these original deities. Venus, I mean, we can go up and up and up to the macro. It's all the same thing, rewritten in different ways. Enki, which is now who we term Lucifer, now who we term Saint Germain, was a brother that took pity and compassion on humanity. He saw that we had intelligence. He gave us more awarenesses. He, against the desire of his father and his brother, he assisted humanity to have a bit more freedoms and abilities. If it were left up to Enlil, who is military, very militant, Saturnian, okay, cabal, darkly aligned, he didn't want us to have anything. We were a slave race in his eyes, and that's how it was. So we go through the ages. The Anunnaki and many of these galactic beings, they have a much longer lifespan than humans do. And so they go through different generations. And as the generations change and the cultures change and the times change, so do their names, so do their looks, all of these things, right? So we can look at these beings, Enki, we can look at, let's see, I'm trying to give you some of the names, Thor, Prometheus, Saint Germain. Look at all of the timelines. They're going to take on these different roles. Enlil is going to be, I wrote this all out. I have to get my other video. But anyway, depending on the eras, right, their representations change. Depending on the cultures, their mythology changes, all of this. So Enki, his domain is the USA. Now, I got this piece of information that I'm about to share from the woman who channeled a lot of the Pleiadians, Barbara Marciniak. And there was a story of the Anunnaki that came channeled through her, that America, the USA, basically, is Enki's pet project. Saint Germain's pet project. So it would totally make sense to me that Saint Germain was there at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. This is his thing, right? In that channeling, she said that the 300 years, however long the USA has been officially declared, that's 1 month's time in Anunnaki time. It's nothingness to them. They're for us, we go through these life cycles. For them, it's just quick. They play the long game. So Anu, as the story goes, saw that the siblings were quarreling. Who's going to rule this? Who's going to rule that? And he said, enough. This is what we're going to do. The Anunnaki, it's been said that they were the ones that gifted us the awareness of astrology. 12 is a sacred number for them. There's, the 12 astrological signs. And so if we look at a revolution of an astrological transit, it's about 2,160 years. He said each cycle, you guys are going to take turns. The next one will rule, the next one will rule, the next one will rule. The age of Aquarius is upon us, right? the experience that we've just gone through was Enlil's cycle. Enlil is militant. He's Saturnian. He's intense. He's got, the strong thumb on the pulse. He holds us down. It's moving into now Enki's turn. He's going to have the age of Aquarius. He's going to have, the quote unquote 1,000 years of peace. And his ruling, his Luciferian way, his false white light, his great white brotherhood is the much more spiritual, happy type energy, right? It gives more peace. It gives more allowance. It's lighter. It's more gentle. Ultimately, it's still a controlling faction, though it comes in the form of more ease, which is, the experience of the New Age movement, in my opinion. So that's a long way to answer your question, but that's how I perceive it. And we're at a very, very precarious time right now because nothing is as it seems. And we must be very careful if we want to have ultimate sovereignty of our spirit through and through and truly take back and command our freedom, and take back Earth, or take back Gaia, because even the word Earth, Ea, that's Anunnaki rulership. Take back the true sovereign Gaia. We have to see through that false white light. We have to see through the veil. We have to see through that fake frequency that can be really clearly differentiated. It's a mock-up. It's not true spirit. It's a mock-up to ruse us. And our discernment is required at this time because it's getting really strategic, really intricate, really intelligent. And if we don't know spirit source in self through and through, then we're going to have a real hard time differentiating.
Yes, and that kind of leads into what I want to ask you next. Kill a couple birds with a stone here. There's one video here that you uploaded 8 months ago. That's one of your more popular videos that Ashtar Command is Cabal, and well, all the Sheldon Neidl fans, I'm sure, out there are going ballistic right now to hear me say that, and also hear you say that. And likewise, on a related note, there's the whole Robert Stanley Enkill perception, where he has confused everybody, and I did an interview with him about this myself, among other things, where he asserts that it's Enki that's the Archon head, and I mean, this also raises the question: when someone is communicating with an entity, what grounds do they have that it's what they are actually communicating with? You got Zachariah Sitchin having some of his followers and people that work with him did actually say that he did allegedly channel Enki, not channel with, I shouldn't say channel, but communicated somehow with Enki to get some of the information for his Earth Chronicles series.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Stanley, he says he met Enki, and his beliefs about Enki, his assertions that he's the bad guy. Well, he says Enki is not evil. That it's more complicated than that. But he's still the one behind the Archonic force, and he flies in the face of what so many other people think of when they think of Enlil and Enkiel. They absolutely think that Enlil's got to be the bad guy. I mean, there's the whole serpent and eagle thing. I believe it was is Enlil represented by the serpent and Enki represented by the eagle. And well, who are these entities that are communicating with these people that claim that they've met them? And when you say in your video here, Ashtar Command is Cabal, is it possible that every Ashtar Command that's good has an Ashtar Command that's an alter ego, and every Enki that's good has an alter ego, and every Enlil that's bad has an alter ego of some sort, and maybe that alter ego is what these people and you are actually communicating with? I'm Sorry if I'm saying you're mistaken here, but how else can I phrase this question?
Yeah, well, and therein lies the reason I no longer channel.
Okay,
So
good answer.
let's be very clear on channeling here. Channeling is possession. Channeling is allowing an energy, an entity, a being, a consciousness, a false technology to access your body and do as it wants. How do channelers know that that's all that's happening while they're channeling? It's quite ignorant to believe that the only thing that's happening there is a communication exchange, you know. So it's a dangerous, dangerous road, especially now, to be channeling. These beings can utilize your technology, install their own technology, access different timelines, different portals, install stargates through your body while you're channeling. So there's one thing that people haven't really opened up and talked about enough yet at all. Though the way I perceive Ashtar and that piece of information, which I highly resonate with, came through the YouTube channel Cosmic Agency, which is a very unique channel. Because the woman who
hold on just a minute there. But before you get into why you think Cosmic Agency is
yep.
unique, I'm sure you're very well aware of the whole thing about Andromeda Council contacting Tolek and Alfred Weber, saying that that's just an artificial intelligence entity masquerading as a Tegetan Pleiadian, and Tolek has flat out said that his Andromeda Council contacts say there is no such entity that she claims exists in Tegeta. If there was, well, there is no possible way we don't know about it. With our state of consciousness, we would absolutely have to be aware of it, and I've talked with Gosha about this. She's given her beliefs and everything regarding why she thinks Tolek is lying or why he would be. But if you have heard about this, how do you make sense of this? And then, well, after, please get into also why you think it's such a unique channel, why it's worth listening to. But hey, I needed to get this out because it's a whole issue on this.
Yeah, I understand. Right, and I have heard that, and again, that information comes through channeling. So in regard to channeling and all of this information as a whole, I mean, no matter what source, it's ultimately, we need to know how to access spirit. We're the only ones who are going to be able to decipher and delineate truths, right? There are half truths and half lies constantly. And we just don't have the ability, when extracting and accumulating information from outside sources, including me, including my research, on and on it goes, to clarify what's what, unless we have full access to spirit. That's the only way we're going to know. And the most efficient way in which to, get this information is through spirit, inside self. Though, because that can be such a daunting task, and it seems a lot easier and maybe more enjoyable to go outside and research, that's what we do. So that's my answer to that. When it comes to what information I take and what I leave, all of it I take with a grain of salt. And I like to state constantly that this is where I'm at right now. This is subject to change. You take what works for you, you leave the rest. Because until we have full ability to differentiate and be clear and really know and read the frequency vibration signatures of quote unquote information, then we're not going to be fully clear. So, whether or not it's a true Tegetan being, I don't know. I don't say that. For me, I'm up on the fence on that one, though I do hear information and resonate with certain pieces, right? And so that's how I go with it. Now, the Ashtar piece was really intriguing to me because I had channeled Ashtar a few times. And as I explained in that video, I had The only two that I can remember discrepancies that I have had in client sessions with channeling, one of them was Ashtar. And he quote unquote, um, came forward through one of the sessions years ago and took me invited me, took me to the ships, whatever. Um, Started telling me, showing me some things about the client, and I relayed the information. It was so not on point, and it invoked fear. And, I immediately regretted, first of all, offering that information. And I was confused because that remote viewing was so clear what I saw. I saw the faces, I saw the clothes, I saw the ship, I saw the structures, it was just really clear. Sometimes it's a little bit more ethereal, sometimes it's just like I'm in the physical space. That was very, very palpable. And then I had, another time a personal channeling with Ashtar that was really odd. And it exposed me, in hindsight, after hearing that, it exposed me to different kind of AI technologies that started really interrupting and kind of messing about with my telepathic access and things like that. So when I heard that information, I just started laughing. It made so much sense to me because I had my own firsthand experience with it. And it was like, yes, of course it would be that clear, because what I perceive that as is it's a mock-up. It's a cabal human created AI technology. It's a false telepathy that gives access to those in which it wants to access, in that case me, remote viewing of false scenes through fourth density. So these controller beings and a lot of the other all the regressive races, their domain is the fourth density. They play in the fourth density realm. So it's, the closest higher density to ours. It's still a density where you can be in physical form. It's easily manipulated and it's easily viewable if you're in that world. And so that was like, okay, it was kind of like I had this list that I could tick off all the boxes of like, yep, that's what that is. I get it. Makes sense. So I fully resonated because of my different experiences I had had around that. Now when it comes to the truth of the matter of it being a Taigetan or a Taigetan fleet, I don't know. I take everything with a grain of salt at this point. Though I do know what information comes through that I happen to resonate with at the time or what I don't. That's basically, I go with that.
Right, and the Cosmic Agency YouTube channel, I myself subscribe to it, and in spite of Alfred Weber originally supporting it and then totally going against it, saying it's got to be a fraud, I think maybe that has something to do with the fact that Alfred is very, very close to Tolek and remembers him well from the 2011 interviews, and he's kind of, maybe dare I say it, biased and is wanting to side with Tolek a little more because he's known him for such a longer period of time. But to think that if that entity that Gosha of Cosmic Agency is communicating with is an artificial intelligence entity masquerading as a Tigetan Pleiadian in order to confuse people with information, it's not doing a very good job. There's only maybe 2 or 3 things at most in all the videos I've seen on Cosmic Agency, and I watch them regularly, where someone could, and I'm very good at spotting these things, where there's like a contradiction made with someone that somebody else in the same field
Right.
of research said, and the science that the entity seems to be talking about, I mean, it doesn't seem any more or less unbelievable than any other way of describing the metaphysical science that it's talking about. There may be different ways of describing it, but there's nothing in there that comes across as being impossible or flawed based on everything else I've heard from metaphysics. So it's kind of, I mean, I've actually raised the possibility on my show, and maybe you can give your take on this radical idea that maybe, well, let's say Gosha is being suckered by a cosmic to get by an artificial intelligence entity masquerading as a Tikate-plated extraterrestrial. But let's just say hypothetically, when Gosha passes away years from now and gets on the other side and gets her life review and figures out all the truths in her life and gets to finally figure out once and for all this entity, whether it was real or not. Let's imagine it is an artificial intelligence entity, but the artificial intelligence, the reason it was playing Gosha for a sap was because it was actually benevolent artificial intelligence that wanted to masquerade as an ET just for the sake of getting truth out to humanity and helping humanity. And some people that I've asked that question to say, I cannot imagine artificial intelligence would actually want to do something like that, because they don't really see artificial intelligence as having an agenda that would involve it faking being a good entity to wake up humanity. But
well,
again,
and you know, I think something too that we're not mentioning here is that the information that those two gentlemen are offering was channeled. And channeling is always susceptible to hacking. I do not care who you are. Channeling will always be susceptible to hacking. So, you know, I wouldn't deem it an AI tech that's coming to offer her information. If anything, it's possible that, you know, it could be a person coming through, because as many of us know, a lot of the truth has to be offered by those in the know. It's a part of the game, it's a part of the rules. So that could be a possibility, that there's information coming through.
Hello? I lost you. Can't hear you. You there? You there?
Sorry about that, Andrew. When a call comes in, it shuts my Skype down.
Yeah,
but as I was saying,
about 10, 12 seconds or so.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that, you know, for me, it's possible. I have thought about it could be, you know, a cabal aligned being a hidden hand person offering truths as they always come forward on some platform to offer the truths that need to be revealed when they need to be revealed. Though either way, I do resonate with a lot of the information that comes through. And again, we all need to have discernment, and it is ultimately much more efficient to go through spirit, self of source, you know. So, and I'm just at this point, I'm quite skeptical to channeling. I mean, that was my domain for so long. And I have such a different perspective on it, you know, from an insider point of view. And it's just, honestly, people aren't going to like hearing this, you know, especially if they're channelers, but it's so easily hacked. Channeling is so easily hacked. It's incredible. And I don't think also people understand how common false telepathy is. You know, I don't think a lot of people have enough of a grasp on the amount of very common, long-standing AI tech that can be used to infiltrate these types of experiences. So all the more reason, you know, to find your own spirit self-source understandings. Because many people are seeded in the truther communities to implement half truths, half lies. They might not even know they're doing it. They might not know consciously that they're being led that way, but that is, it's just rampant. And it can be very, very hard to sift through what's what.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to something else here. another one of your more popular videos. Well, the first word in the video here is going to get a lot of attention from a lot of people. Ayahuasca, a shaman's perspective, Cusco, Peru. I didn't watch this or anything. I hopefully maybe you remember some of the things that were talked about in this. One thing that really freaked me out from my personal ayahuasca experience was not the actual experience. It was what came after the day before, the day before we were gonna go. I and the people there were gonna go back to our homes and all from the experience in the Cusco area of Peru. Um, the guy who gave us the two ayahuasca experiences, also one San Pedro experience we all got to do. This was in the December 2018, around the winter solstice, or in that case the summer solstice, because it was southern hemisphere. And after the sessions and all that, he had a final talk with all of us, and during the talk with me, he actually said something that really hit me like a ton of bricks. He actually told me, Andrew, when you go back to America, I actually would perhaps advise you consider seeking therapy and maybe even take some medication. You come across as a schizophrenic or someone with an autistic spectrum disorder, and I don't think that's going to help you in the world that much. And that hit me really hard. Not so much, I didn't take offense to that. He's not the first one who's actually told me that. What I found most shocking and disturbing about that was that I would not expect someone who offers ayahuasca and San Pedro and also Machu Picchu retreats to actually have a problem or an issue with anyone that's a schizophrenic or has an autistic spectrum disorder. I mean, ayahuasca, in a sense, it kind of turns your mind into the mind of a schizophrenic or someone that's has an autistic spectrum disorder. So why would this guy have a problem with people like that to actually tell me I think you need to see a shrink and take medication to solve it? So, well, that was the reason I gave him 4 stars instead of 5 stars when he asked me for a review. I would have given you 5 stars, except you kind of hit me like a ton of bricks with that statement. Not something I expect a person like you to be saying. Well, there's nothing else that this guy from a ayahuasca offering shaman and all that would lead me to think he's fraudulent. The stuff he gave me was definitely for real. I felt it, and trip to Machu Picchu was great and all that. But well, a shaman's perspective. Would this shaman that you talked with, would he actually say that guy's a total whack job, having told you that he's obviously got some flaws, or am I just really so far out that anybody would have told me that? I don't know.
Well, I can't say I know you outside of this short Skype webinar, so I wouldn't be able to answer on the personal note. But shamans are humans. They're just people, and a lot of them, I think it depends on each shaman. How much experience have they had? How true are they to the ancient shaman way of how they became a shaman and what they offer and how they access? And so, I mean, I would take that with a grain of salt. I think there is an unfortunate experience happening with a lot of these nature-based plant medicines, that they're being used recreationally. And to each their own, though as far as I know, the original ritual of utilizing these plant medicines was only bestowed upon a shaman or those that were in dire need of seeking. And it was a one-on-one experience, and it was a great honor, and it was taken with great care and reverence. And now it's quite common, to go up into the hills of LA and sit with 150 people or whatever. Maybe that's overdoing it, maybe 30 people, and have an experience where there's one facilitator, maybe 2. So I don't align with how that plays out because and nor have I ever tried it, so I speak, through ignorance of that. I know many people who ayahuasca has changed their lives for the better. I know many people who have fractured so significantly from ayahuasca that it took them years to get back. And that's a very scary thing. And I know
Whoa!
from
I
my
gotta stop
pers
you right there because I'm sure all the Graham Hancock fans are saying you got to be kidding me. Ayahuasca only does good for you. I mean, and you're saying that that's not the case. So,
no.
okay,
And
really?
why would it be? Let's look at anything that alters our reality. I think everything that alters our reality can, depending on the way it interacts with your own very personal, unique experiences in your shadow, it can be very scary for individuals. I mean, across the board, there's lots of people who can't handle nicotine. I mean, so it it depends on the experience and the process of the user, the shadow it's accessed, probably the energy of the deity in the deva in the ayahuasca. I mean, there's all sorts of factors, though I I have seen journeying through astral space, accessing clients in their, like, not in real time, right? Going into the timeline where they were on ayahuasca and seeing it from that perspective. So for me, I have a very particular view of it, but I've never tried it. So I'm ignorant to that experience. And I don't post videos with naysaying around any plant medicine or recreational drug for that matter, because there's my experience in that is there's so much pushback. People get so passionate and upset when they're very pro it. And a lot of people seem to lose their ability to allow somebody to have a counter view, right? Um, though, that particular shaman, he also says that he uses it very rarely. He says he uses it only when he needs answers, though he does facilitate it. Um, and it's quite obvious that it has become a business structure for many people. I have one client who she has used it in very ritual experiences where she went to the Amazon and she, went seeking for answer. It was a very spiritual quest, and it for her it prepared her womb, and then she got pregnant, which was what she wanted after trying for years. So I think that it can be wonderful and it can be debilitating. I have another client and friend who she's a very powerful healer. And it was surprising because of her abilities and her awareness of accessing those realms that, and she was also in the Amazon. And she always said she would never try it because her sister fractured heavily when her sister tried it. She soul fractured, and so she had a very negative view on it. Though she finds herself in the Amazon with the native people and in Brazil, and it just felt right. It felt safe. It felt sacred, and she fractured completely in such a significant way. It took her a really, really long time to get back to a whole being again. So it's like, and I know people that have tried it and they didn't feel anything. They've tried it a handful of times and it just doesn't work for their body chemistry.
Well, that's maybe because
So,
they didn't do the Daida. The first time I did ayahuasca, some friend of mine actually was willing to give it to me using some concoctions that he bought from websites and created it the same way that the shamans in South America do and brought it to my place. But I didn't do the Daida and prepare. It was a total mistake on my part because all I did was barf the stuff out shortly after I took it and had diarrhea for a while and no psychoactive experience. The only good thing that came out of that was that it cleansed me from the yakking and shitting, but it didn't do anything psychoactively. If they did not, if you have to do the Daida, that
Yeah.
cannot be stressed enough when it comes to ayahuasca. It does make a whale of a difference, and I found that out when I took every precaution to make sure I didn't do anything wrong for my
Yeah.
pre-ayahuasca days before going to South America in December 2018. Totally different experience there, so that matters, and that made
Right.
yes.
Well, this woman I'm talking about, and that's intriguing you say that because this particular woman, she's quite small, very healthy, and eats very, very clean. So, but she said she tried it 3 times, I think, 3 or 4 times. She sat in twice, the last time, and it just doesn't work for her. And I thought that was interesting. I don't know why. I didn't try to tune into it, but anyway, it was interesting, talking to him, and one thing that I remember is that he had said, I said, how do you become a shaman? In his Peruvian, um, like their particular style of shamanism. And he says, well, you do one of two things. Either you go into the mountains or the forested area, right? Or the Amazon, and you stay there for, God, did he say over a year or 3 years or something with nothing? You like just go there with nothing and you survive. You know, you don't bring food, you don't bring your water, you don't bring, extra clothes, you don't have community, whatever. Or you get struck by lightning. And I thought that was so interesting that these are the two ways, like, and then it made me wonder, and this is just for fun, but like, does that mean that people that, in that culture really want to be a shaman? Do they go out seeking getting struck? You know, are they like, I really want to be a shaman. I'm going to go stand in the zone, right? Above the tree line with wet feet here from the rainstorm and just maybe. But, so anyway, and the perspective I got from him too was I was more intrigued with, from a metaphysical standpoint, what his accesses are and what he views. He didn't really go into it. We had a language barrier, but um, at least the Peruvians, they have a very strong connection with the earth, with Pachamama, and the mountains and the land. And so it was very beautiful listening to his music, and all the music speaks of the nature, and speaking on the connections, and paying homage to the land. And he did, I don't know the way he runs his, retreats or ayahuasca journeys or whatever, but he did seem to be against it being used recreationally, which is good. Though, again, as I've said, I haven't tried it. I don't know. I don't need it because I don't need to access in that way. I have access, but I know I've never experienced that type of access because it's its own deva, its own plant deva. And, if it's a tool that serves people, then more power to it. I just think people need to be wise in whatever they're utilizing to change their experience with reality.
Thank you for giving your take on that. That was one of the more recent videos, so I figured I'd talk about it. Some of the more recent videos here, I guess I can ignore all the ones that involve channeling and all that, which would have been 3 years ago and onward. Is that right? There's really
Yeah.
no sense going to those videos. Was it 3 years ago or a little
Oh,
sooner?
no, I mean, no, it's been more recent. I guess I officially stopped channeling, maybe September.
Oh, okay. Um, well, us go to this one. Soul fractures, what are they, and how do I heal them? And just for hell of it, I also want to ask you, is there such a thing as a spirit fracture? And I ask that because there are some cultures that say soul and spirit are two different forms of the same thing, and there are others that say that they are different. But if there is a difference, nobody seems to know what it is because for everybody that says the difference between soul and spirit is blah blah blah, there's someone else that says the difference between soul and spirit is not blah blah blah, it's yada yada yada. So nobody really knows what the difference is, except for the people that say that they're one and the same thing, which, well, that's what they believe, but is it really true? Please, give your take on that, and also soul fractures. What are they, and how do I heal them? And is there such a thing as a spirit fracture?
So that's a very interesting question. I perceive spirit and soul as very different things. So I perceive soul as a technology overlay onto our spirit that interfaces with this matrix. Our soul, in my perspective, is the accumulation of experiences throughout all of our timelines or lifetimes when we've been separated from source. And our soul harbors our, belief systems, choices, different perspective ways of being, which it's the one that holds on to the karma, all of these types of things. So we must learn to train our soul out of limiting beliefs and emotional karmic loops. And ultimately, we will transcend our soul to access pure spirit. I perceive spirit as the pure, raw form that is our essence of Creator Source Prime. So I see them very differently. To get real literal, we're not a fracture of spirit, but I like to explain it as we're a grain of sand on the beach of source, right? So we're all our own more micro representation of the ultimate spirit source. I do believe that one's spirit can get overtaken, can get swiped from a lot of these beings. I believe it can be stamped out. You can lose your access to spirit if you fully, move into selling your soul. By born right, by just sheer existence as a being that is from spirit source, you always have the potential to access spirit, though many people, many beings don't find that access. They get lost from it, all of that type of thing. That's why, people like us, we seek, because we want that access fully. Now, soul fracturing, very common. Everybody experiences it. It's a part of humanity. It's a part of being in this consciousness. Animals, soul fracture, all sorts of things. So a soul fracture can happen pretty easily, actually. Soul fractures happen all the time. It could be through a trauma. It doesn't matter if it's emotional, mental, physical, psychological, etheric, you name it. And that's ultimately what your subconscious is, and what shadow work is it's accessing those parts of you that are harboring trauma, harboring darkness, and piecing that back together to integrate back into wholeness so that you can heal and ultimately return into spirit source. So that's how I see it. I also believe that spirit can be infused into, maybe a being that didn't have a full natural consciousness, because ultimately we're in the realm of spirit. And so anything's possible in that way. And I do believe you can lose access to your spirit. I do believe you can get lost. I think a lot of people do. And the way in which that's implemented is through the soul. So, we're constantly having to battle. I don't care who you are, we're all battling the soul hacking that's constantly happening. And, the soul is something that we have to train and change and command in our moment. I think there's a mistake where a lot of people who maybe, if they do believe in karma, in incarnations and other lifetimes, they believe that in a way they're kind of ruled by that experience, and they're fated, or they have a destiny to what their soul has experienced. Though I don't perceive that we have to be fated to it. I believe that that fate and destiny is just us not being responsible for taking command of our soul and changing what has already happened. You know, whether that's timeline jumping, past, present, future, accessing an all now moment, maybe faulty belief systems or negative patternings, what have you, to alter the technology of our soul to assist ourself.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Um, well, you mentioned karma there, and that is an issue that I've been dealing with a lot personally ever since I discovered a little thing about myself based on a low shoe grid reading that I did, and I talked about this with Lori Spagna when I had her on the show recently. I didn't know at the time that this was a low shoe grid exercise that I had done, but I told her it was something with your date of birth, fill it in some sort of a grid in the design, and below the grid, write zeros. You'll have anywhere from like 0 to 4 zeros, and the more you have, the more karma in this lifetime you have to resolve. And Lori was like, I bet some person just made that up as an exercise. I don't really think that that's for real. Well, afterwards I figured out it was that's Lo Shu, a Chinese exercise of some sort, and a lot of ancient Chinese practices. I certainly have a lot of faith in, and for good reason. And this discovery that I, in my chart, have 2 zeros below it, suggesting that I have a fairly decent amount of karma in this lifetime to resolve. I would want to do whatever I can to resolve as much karma as possible, as quickly as possible. And I've done a couple little things here and there that I would expect would speed up the process. One of my favorite ones is pick up as much litter as possible. I would have to think for every piece of litter that I pick up off Mother Earth, I'm resolving some karma for doing a decent thing. But another thing about karma that maybe you can help me understand if this is a stupid way of trying to resolve karma, or whether it may actually make sense and maybe make a man out of me to a greater extent, or anybody else, is using the no pain, no gain. You actually do use it for gain. You use it for karmic gain. Is it safe to learn how to become a masochist and someone who gets suffers from a lot of pain and willfully try to hurt yourself with the intent that the more pain that you suffer, the more karma you get to resolve? If suffering pain is a way to get more karma resolved faster, then well, you got nothing to lose and everything to gain. No pain, no gain is flat out wrong. So is that a healthy way to try to resolve karma? Become a masochist?
Definitely not.
And why not?
I've never heard of that, actually. Help me understand how, from that perspective, being in more pain would resolve karma.
Well, eye for an eye. That's 100% maximum resolved karma in one sitting.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see what you're
you kill
saying.
someone, or someone gets you get killed in the process. You rape someone, then you're the one then you have to get raped in order for eye for an eye karma. Well, if
I
you hurt
see.
someone, okay, how do I resolve this karma? You have to resolve it because that karma exists. That's your punishment. Well, how about I suffer as much pain as the person that I hurt? I actually, like, maybe a man could allow someone to kick him in the nuts because well, you don't know because you're a woman, but any man knows that a blow to the balls really hurts. Well,
Yeah, well, I tell you, a blow to the crotch for the ladies is no
I've heard that
present
too, but
pleasant.
my point is, someone you'd be crazy to want
Yeah,
someone to kick you in the nuts. But what if you're doing it for your own karmic resolution good?
I
Is
get
that,
what you're saying.
yeah, is it?
Yes. So that's an intriguing point of view, and I can see how one might perceive that from one lens, but I would say that's actually counter. And the reason being is because if you're intentionally hurting yourself, you're creating more, not just the physical pain. Obviously, you're creating the physical pain, right? But you're also fracturing your soul more. You're hurting yourself in other ways, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. So it's creating more shadow work for you to then resolve in order to get back to a holistic place. the way in which I see, if one has such a devout belief in karma, because this is very much based in belief here, that they have penance to pay. So if that is an unwavering belief for them, then my suggestion for resolving that karma would be forgiveness, seeking forgiveness, working to do, like Ho'oponopono is a great practice for that. It doesn't have to play out exactly as the way it was delivered, though. If one's willing to release a belief, a stringent belief around karma, I also believe that karma is something that we have been fed and bought into in a big way in order to ensnare and entrap us into this suppression matrix. So while there's action reaction, I believe that a big part of the manipulation of the incarnation hack that's happening is that, if you don't know any better, you die, you cross over, you go through that white tunnel, you show up in the false white light plane of bliss, and they say, oh, welcome, here you are, let us celebrate. Okay, enough partying, now let us review your life. Here, Andrew, is what you did wrong. Here is how this person felt. Here's what you did right. And here is your new list of what you need to pay back in your karmic debt. And you say, oh, okay, let me take this list and I'm going to reincarnate and I'm going to go set this straight. Well, I don't believe that that's the way it has to go. I believe you can release it and say, you know what? No, I opted into that matrix and that timeline, and so do they, and done is done. Now I'm going to go, if I choose to return, I can try to be the best that I can be, and I need to resolve my experiences as my issues, but I don't have to guilt or burden myself, because I believe that guilt, shame, blame are like three heads of the same coin that keep us entrapped in the lack of self-love. So ultimately, self-forgiveness, I think, is imperative. And giving yourself permission to transmute it and dissolve it and not believe that you have to carry it forward and pay it forward. Because there is a lot of pain that goes into self-flagellation and feeling guilty and feeling bad. That in its own is a karmic debt. We carry that life after life after life, and it drags us down and it takes away our happiness. So it doesn't mean that you feel that and you need to also get hit by a car, So it's very much, you create your reality. So I would say take care with the way in which you believe it needs to be. Do you want that to be the way it is? Because that doesn't sound very enjoyable. But again, if you're a masochist, that might be your bag. So
Right.
that's how I view it.
And is there any way, to your knowledge, for any person to judge whether or not their good deeds, um, how much karma they've resolved, whether it's just a drop in the bucket out of the full bucket full of karma that they have to resolve, or like my analogy of picking up litter, like I would have to think that picking up a cigarette butt, that's just a drop in the bucket on the karma resolution. But if I pick up a tire that's been thrown in a thicket, um, that's a much bigger, like several cups of water out of the cup of karma, because it's a harder thing to pick up off the ground and harder thing to carry to the garbage can, if you get my drift. And
Yeah, I
right,
see that point of view.
how do you
Um,
determine how much karma you're resolving by your good deed, or is there really no way to figure it out? You'll find out when you cross over.
well, and again, I'm going to take this back to belief systems. So, if you believe that you've got this karmic load that you have to pay off, then you will find out when you go back over, and you'll be shown, okay, this is how much you got left. Only 5 more lifetimes, Andrew, you got it. Just don't do anything that I wouldn't do to get more. But so, I mean, I think that ultimately the most benevolent perspective of this is that you wouldn't be picking up trash in order to work off your karma. You'd be doing it because you love Gaia and you want to assist.
Well, I'm
And
doing it for both reasons, actually. Which reason I'm thinking about at any given time is different, but I still can.
Right.
I do intend to do it for both reasons, no question.
And because I think that perspective can transcend the belief that you have this debt or penance to pay. And that's just my view of it. I don't believe that we have to be enslaved to as much karma as we actually believe that we have. I do believe in action reaction, and I do believe that things have to shift. There's polarity energy, though I don't think it's in the way that we've most of us have been learned about it.
Well, thank you for helping make sense of that. And just something I might as well, excuse me, try to get out. For those that really don't like the idea of picking up litter because it grosses you out too much, you do have options. There is a search engine I recently heard about that I've been using religiously. Even when I don't have to use it, I just go there just for the sake of typing in something to pass the time. Oceanhero.today. Use that search engine for every 5 searches you do. You generate enough advertising revenue for the people behind it to pick up 1 container of plastic out of the ocean, which is what they seek to do. Our oceans are chock full of plastic, and well, since I mentioned that, it's been the word on the street is that one thing that our ET brethren want to do to help us and help Gaia in the process is make the litter bugs look really bad and greatly help humanity out by getting all the litter out of the Pacific Ocean, all the plastic out of it. Can we, if that is the case, is it possible that we, humanity, would speed up the process if more people on planet Earth actually asked the ETs and the ETs, higher conscious entities, to pick up more plastic out of the ocean for us? Can we be sure that they do that for us? And or is this one of those things that we have to do ourselves because it's our plan, and the ETs they're really not going to do that? Do you think maybe the people who have said that were being suckered by some sort of a false light entity and believing that they take the plastic out of our oceans?
Yeah, I do believe that, this is our responsibility. I trust that when we get to the point where we are mature enough as a global civilization to accept and acknowledge the galactic beings, and differentiate which ones we would be wise to align with and which ones we would not, that they would be more than happy to clean up our planet or assist us, show us how to be more efficient in it, lickety split. Though it's not their responsibility, it's ours. And we're not in a place where humanity is open to allowing them to come assist us in a significant way, which is unfortunate, but just the way it is. So I don't think it serves to, again, look outside of self. I think this is up to us, and we need to help ourselves. And once we finally can come together, that is what's going to open up the opportunities, such as bringing in that type of help. But, if we can't work together, how can we expect for them to come assist us and us to accept it? It's just, that doesn't make sense to me. We're still divided, we're still separated in so many ways. So, and we have enough resources to clean up our planet right now, but we're not doing it. So there's that, you know. Um, I mean, if we want to like extend an olive branch, let's stop producing plastic, right? Let's stop using petroleum. Let's shift our paradigm in a big way, you know, but unfortunately that's just not happening yet. So,
Yes, and well, that raises another question about to what extent do we really need to make a big stink out of those issues, the monetary and the technology issue? Because whenever I talk about trying to fix the financial system, I always stress that you got to talk about fixing the technology system as well. And also, if you're going to talk about technology, you got fixing the technology system. You absolutely have to talk about fixing the financial system too, because they do go hand in hand. There's nothing more that proves my point than this video I saw where it was a play on Nikola Tesla trying to give his technology out to someone when way back in the beginning of the 20th century, and the guy flat out said, Tesla, I'm not interested. A little box that gives energy to everybody on the block, there's no profit in that. Okay, so
exactly.
exactly. So to fix the problem, you have to um, solve both problems at the same time. And when it comes to the monetary issue, I keep saying over and over that the ball and chain around the economy and the rest of the earth, for that matter, if there is one, if you had to pick the most significant ball chain, it's got to be the loaning money that doesn't exist and charging interest on it. Emphasis on the charging interest on it, because that's what makes the debt and inflation unavoidable. And if you don't get rid of that, then you can talk all you want about how money is nothing more than a system of energy that we use to exchange things. That saying that isn't going to really help when you're a perpetual debt in a system that, well, we got to get rid of if we want to get somewhere. So, I mean, but then again, I hear people try to tell me, Andrew, relax. You're basically hating money with that attitude, and that's not good. But how can I not show a little bit of distaste for something that I know is designed to screw us over? I have to show distaste for it because how else can you expect to get rid of it? So you want to create world peace, so that's why your site is World Peace Projects. I mean, how do you advise, if you can give advice, to get back to some financial system where there's no usury, to eventually transition to no money at all, maybe after 15 or 20 years, however long it'll take, and getting the technology out in the process so that profit will not become an issue, so you don't even have to worry about money anymore when the oil suppressing technology comes out. Any suggestions?
You know, that's a tough one. I believe that the monetary systems globally are about to change radically within the next few years. Um, I do think that there are ways in which we can get away from this way of living with and using money, which requires a conscious society. Um, I believe that the design of the system financially, monetarily, is very structured to enslave. And, you know, I think that there are some changes coming which are going to seem really wonderful. But again, not everything is as it seems. And I have been living in a way for many years now where, while I know that this system is set up in which money is required, I find my wisest experience is to live in a way where I am the least amount reliant on it. So I've been doing that for a number of years, for many reasons. You know, there's reasons with that of not being enslaved to money. You know, I have as little, I don't have any debt. I don't have any bills that aren't necessary, save, you know, like maybe one or two subscriptions for something fun that I enjoy. Um, but also because when the financial system collapses, I'll be in a much better position than many people. It's quite easy, I think, to get enslaved and locked into many, many systems when you're super duper reliant on money and not open to alternative avenues. And whichever way that plays out, I do think that it's going to really, really behoove people to put themselves in a position where they're not solely reliant on money for their survival. I think it's very, very important, because those changes are going to be quite chaotic, seemingly, and confusing, and it'll take a while to readjust. So, and I do think it's going to readjust. It will happen. It might not happen in the way we want it to or the way we expect it, though we all know that this financial climate is built on a facade. I mean,
Right.
we all know.
Another thing about it is so much timing plays involved with it. I mean, like if you find out we're going to go to the gold standard, I mean, you only have like a limited amount of time to get prepared for that before you're going to be impoverished when the gold standard happens. I mean, it's like a contest where they say, be one of the first 200 people to call into this contest and you get some sort of a prize. Well, you wait just a couple seconds after the thing happens where you're supposed to call in, you can be sure the phone lines are going to be loaded up and there's going to be no prize. Well, likewise with transitioning to the gold standard, if you hear that the gold standard is going to happen and you don't do squat and try to obtain any gold or anything, prepare for it, you can be sure that when you try to get some gold, they're going to say, sorry, all the gold's already been taken by all the people who wanted to claim it after the gold standard was announced. You don't get anything. So, well, the way to prevent that is make sure that before the transition has happened, you prepare for it and maybe get as much gold and silver as you can reasonably afford before the transition happens. But I mean, how are we supposed to have any idea when what are they going to announce from a media standpoint, a government standpoint, to actually tell us, wink, 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 we're going to have a financial system change. If you know it's good for you, get out of the dollar and switch to other necessities, or else if you wait too long after it's announced, you're going to get squat and you're going to be impoverished for a little bit. So how do you I guess there really is no answer. It's just we have to wait and see how it happens. But can you maybe give it a little advice for when this transition? And I'm thinking it's happening soon. I hope, because recently Joseph P. Anthony did a video with Miss M, who had from Sedona, whose acquaintance M is well into the RV, the Sarjasar thing with the in China, and he's saying they really wanted to come online, but if it's going to be smooth or not, we don't know. And how do you prepare for it? How do you know when you got to start preparing before the announcement is made?
Yeah. Well, I'll tread lightly here, though. I also perceive Nasara Gasara as false white light,
Yes,
an
I've
agenda,
heard that too.
right? Really aligned with, I think what we really need to be paying attention to is Agenda 21. I think that by 2030, this world is going to look very different. And I think that we are going to get to a point where there's going to be a very real experience around the need to prepare for martial law, for people understanding that they're being corralled in a way where it's a one world domination, and the better off you are in getting to a higher altitude and set up in a way where you can survive off grid and low key is going to be pretty wise. And I think that type of mentality has been viewed as, skeptic and conspiracy theory and that whole thing for a long time. Though I think that at this point, it will very quickly become more obvious to many people that that could be a very, very real plausibility quite soon. So I think we all need to prepare for mass changes, regardless of what those changes are. And, maybe not put all our eggs into one basket. And kind of have many different scenarios and strategies available for different ways that things can roll out, because change is coming and it's coming fast. I mean, astrologically alone, this next 10 years, it already started at the very end of last year, the beginning of this year, is unfounded. I mean, the astrological transiting happening in this technological revolution from 2010 to 2030 is unreal. And it's going to change the face of this planet, whichever way it does.
Yes.
So
and
it's time to prepare.
It is. And David Icke did make a video not that long ago where he said 2030 would be the year when technology and human work is very much intertwined. He didn't specify whether it would be a positive or negative timeline. I'm pretty sure he's hinting that it's going to be positive. He talks about a lot of negative stuff, but he has also said that he expects the vibrational energy of the Earth ever since the 2012 winter solstice to be nothing but increasing and increasing to the point where well, he won't have to talk about negativity as much as he does. I think he maybe talks about more than he probably should at this point, because love energy is increasing at a high rate. That maybe he's being a little bit of a hindrance talking about negativity as much as he wants to. But anyhow, the thing about 2030, you said that too, and it's interesting. The Terminator movies, 2029 is the year the Terminator was sent back from to kill Sarah Connor. But of course, those movies were based on a negative timeline in 2029, 2030. When the machines had taken over. David Icke would probably assert he doesn't see that happening. He's going to see the machines being able to intermingle with humanity and also spiritual life too. We're going to try to make machines a little bit spiritual themselves, bring out the spirituality in the machines, if you can believe there is such a thing. I'm sure there is such a thing, because as the Japanese believe, everything has a soul, including machines. So they have the ability to do it too. But the last thing I want to talk about before we call it a show, I guess it only makes sense to end the show on the best note possible, and that is the most popular video you've ever done by a pretty big landslide here, 12,000 views 2 years ago, how to consciously shift timelines, quantum jumping. Well, when you're talking about this, I presume you're speaking more to the individual, but you would have to think that collective timelines can be switched too if you got large amounts of people doing what they can to switch it. So I'd like to hear maybe your take on that. And one specific example, I can't help but wonder myself, do I have the ability to do anything to switch to this timeline, or would I have no way of knowing if this timeline ended? I was told by Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis during a session he did with me that there was actually an alternate timeline where I played for the Philadelphia Phillies Major League Baseball team when I didn't get cut from my high school baseball team by my discriminatory coach, who thought I was going to be too much of a distraction because everybody had so much fun with me. But yeah, so makes me wonder, is there any possible way for me to quantum jump to that timeline, or or would that be a timeline that would be causally disconnected from this one to some degree? And how do you know if a timeline that you're trying to switch to that is out there because some Akashic regulator told you, how do you know whether or not that timeline would be causally disconnected and unreachable, if you get what I'm trying to say here?
Well, I think that when it comes to timeline jumping, I love reverse engineering timelines. So I do it all the time. I usually do it in regard to quote unquote going back to past experiences that have instigated a soul trauma, soul fracture, and played out into karmic looping or something like that. I find it very, very powerful and quite easy to do once you've learned how to. And there's some prereqs around it. In regard to changing it, one must be willing to believe you have changed it, right? To hold on to that as a truth. I do believe that we're constantly shifting collective and personal timelines all the time. I do believe that when mass consciousness has shifts around awarenesses and awakenings, that it shifts timelines, whether we're aware that it's happening. Though one can only be more clear about their personal timeline. So there are technologies as well where you can shift and do jumping into timelines if you have the 4D tech, where you can actually experience that in a very physical way. Those resources are not shared, so not many of us get to access that in that physical fourth density experience. Though that exists, I think that there's plenty to be utilized when we finally have the pleasure of having more interfacing with benevolent galactic beings that they have to share with us. Though a timeline like what you're talking about, the way I've experienced that type of thing is you can easily access it through, remote viewing, astral projecting, whatever you want to call it. Though, in order to have that physical experience, you would literally have to be able to open up a portal where you could walk through into that reality or access a jump room, which most people just don't have access to. That's held for the elite, that's held for the covert government, things like that. So you're welcome to view it in astral space, though to have the pleasure of, physically catching that ball, you might need an in with somebody and the higher ups that could take you there. So, and I do think it's a very valuable tool to shift timelines and quantum jump. I have had it change my life radically many times. And it's fun. Why not?
Right. And all right, we've got past the 2 hour point, but since you mentioned catch a ball, one little thing I want to get out that since you use the phrase analogy, catch the ball, the baseball thing, there is something I might as well point out now since you mentioned that, which I think if this is true, it may actually help people make sense of how timelines are connected. Well, catch a ball. It's funny you mentioned that there was a Phillies game in 1996 where Lee Tinsley, who was playing for the Phillies at that time, hit a foul ball that like hit the upper deck railing and then came down in my direction. I had leaped out of my seat when the ball started coming in my direction, and the ball actually landed in my seat, and I saw several arms fighting over it helplessly, knowing I'd have no chance of getting it because someone else was going to get it, even though it was in my seat. And the old man sitting next to me eventually got the ball, and he was nice enough to give it to me. I guess he felt sorry for me that I witnessed people fighting over a ball. And the funny thing is, though, Lee Tinsley and also Pete Incaviglia, who was the greatest slugger in the history of college baseball. He also played for the Phillies in 1996 for a little while, and I had the chance of getting my picture with Pete Incaviglia when he was playing independent baseball in, I think it was 1999, 2000, something like that, where got his picture. I got my picture taken with him when I went to the spring training site, the independent baseball team. I was thinking about him a lot, and I didn't understand why, so I decided, well, I'll just get my picture because my family is not too far from staying in Florida, not too far from where the site was. According to Andrew Bartzis, Lee Tinsley, the guy who hit the ball, and Pete Caviglia were both assistant coaches on the Philadelphia Phillies team that I played for in the alternate timeline. And if that is true, then that means that the universe has ways of saying, wink, wink, this person that interacted with you has a big significant role in some other timeline. So now that I've brought that to your attention, does that make sense that when you witness something like far out, like an outlier event in life, with someone doing something like Lee Tinsley hitting a foul ball or Peter Caviglia getting a picture with me, that means you can be sure that on some timeline there's something else going on with those people.
I don't know if you can be sure. I think your spirit would tell you so. I feel like you may already be having some resonance with that. But it's an interesting thing you bring up because I'm currently watching Cloud Atlas, I think it's called. It's a really long movie, so I'm doing it in two parts, but it's very much like that. It's the movie interweaves many timelines where the same characters are constantly coming into each other's lives at different points in time. And I do know that that is a very common experience with parallel realities and alternate timelines, is we are often interfacing with the same people, or same soul aspects, maybe in different forms, interweaving in a way like a braid constantly. So yeah, I think that's very plausible. And again, it's fun to think about, why not? Um, if that brings you joy, then let that be a wonderful validation to your spirit that, hey, I didn't make it this go, but you know, I still got a little morsel of access in some way.
Okay. Well, thank you for giving your take on that. That helps lightens me up a little bit. So we've already gone a couple minutes past the 2 hour point. I don't want to go any further because people have lousy attention spans, and unfortunately, that's kind of cost me a potentially big audience on this show because I do 2 hour shows. But just to close out here, anything you like for the last minute or so, anything you want to get out, and please give out your contact info, and then we'll call it a night.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out and having me on your show. My name again is Chloe Hudson with World Peace Projects. My website is worldpeaceprojects.global. And if anybody is in the Los Angeles area, I am starting a 5-week advanced matrix decoding course that will start on February 23rd at Jupiter Soundscapes. You can go to my website to get more information, worldpeaceprojects.global. And I also have a YouTube channel called World Peace Projects if you ever want to check out my work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming on my show. Pleasure talking to you, Chloe. It's not Chloe, it's Chloe. And interesting, if they type your name Chloe Hudson into a search engine, a lot of things for women's bags will come up. Apparently, there's a Hudson Chloe bag, women's bag
Yes.
company. You know what? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's not to be confused with you or anything. So you're the
I
World Peace
wish.
Project. Yes. So thought I'd point that out so people don't get confused if they see that. So, pleasure talking to you. Good luck on everything you do. I love your work. I'll keep watching your videos for sure. Take care.
Thank you, Andrew. Take care.